everyone, Jessa here. Today, I thought I'd share with you what is PTSD, which is a mental illness that I suffer from. Any and all information that I discuss, references will be listed down below in the description box, so check it out. And in the next few weeks, I'm coming out with additional videos that go into further detail on what triggers are, different types of PTSD, etc. PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, is a mental illness that actually used to be considered an anxiety disorder in the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is what psychologists and psychiatrists use to diagnose mental illnesses. But in the most recent edition, it changed, and now it's actually listed under trauma or stress-related disorders. You can still have anxiety with PTSD, as well as have an anxiety disorder along with PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder requires you to actually be exposed, witness, or hear about in some way a traumatic event before you can actually get the diagnosis of PTSD. So a traumatic or stressful event has to actually trigger the PTSD. Examples of this are what everyone thinks of, which is serving the military, as well as being a first responder, fireman, policeman, etc., being the victim of a natural disaster or a terrorist attack, or being the victim of domestic abuse, rape, torture, etc. Now, many people are exposed to a traumatic event, and most of them will have something called PTS, which is post-traumatic stress, afterwards as a result. But they are able to move on. They wouldn't meet the diagnostic criteria for PTSD. Exhibiting symptoms of post-traumatic stress up to a month following a traumatic event is actually considered completely normal. So just because someone exhibits symptoms of PTSD a few days, few weeks, or up to a month after the traumatic event occurred doesn't mean that they're going to actually get PTSD. To get diagnosed, you have to be diagnosed by a medical professional such as a psychologist or a psychiatrist. You have to be experiencing the symptoms for a month or longer. I myself was diagnosed 7-8 years ago, and it's something that I continue to struggle with to this day. So what are the symptoms? One symptom that most people recognize, I think, based on the media and how it portrays PTSD, is flashbacks, which is something I personally struggle with. Flashbacks are actually under the category of one of the 4 criteria that someone has to meet before they can get a diagnosis of PTSD. In order to get a diagnosis of PTSD is re-experiencing. So flashbacks, like I mentioned, and if you see me looking down, it's because I'm reading some of the stuff I printed out. Avoidance is another category. That's number 2, and that refers to distressing memories, thoughts, feelings, or external reminders of the event. So re-experiencing is more spontaneous memories. Avoidance refers to distressing memories or external reminders. Re-experiencing could be all of a sudden you have a nightmare or something related to it, and you have trouble sleeping throughout the night. Whereas avoidance is more like getting anxious because I'm driving past the place where my traumatic event occurred and I know I'm going to pass it. Number 3, negative cognitions and moods. Blame of self or others. I've seen this a lot talking to other people where they blame themselves for being weak for having PTSD. Or they blame themselves for, oh, if I never went out that night, then maybe that attack wouldn't have happened on me. You can't help that you have PTSD, and you shouldn't feel ashamed or embarrassed ever that you have PTSD. PTSD actually changes your brain, so it's not like you're choosing to experience all these symptoms. One of the hardest things for me to deal with is the fact that my PTSD comes from rape. In a way, you feel like your PTSD keeps you safe because it's your brain trying to protect you from what happened and prevent it from happening again in the future. Number 4, which is arousal, which basically encompasses aggressiveness, recklessness, self-destructive behavior, sleep disturbances, hypervigilance, which is something I struggle with, or related problems. It's that fight or flight thing. It's the hypervigilance thing. It's that someone always looking over their shoulder when they're walking because they're almost paranoid. I think one of the hardest things is the lack of sensitivity and awareness towards anyone with PTSD, the lack of resources for help with PTSD, the stigma surrounding, in my experience, being a rape survivor as well as having PTSD from it, and the stigma that others face for having PTSD and finding help and getting help or making more resources available. It's not just someone who was in the military who suffers from it. It's something I have to live with the rest of my life because there is no cure for PTSD at this time, but there's hope for healing some of the pain that I've been through or not letting my PTSD get in the way of my life like it has in the past. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye guys.